attributes of a great advisory board or council. So, as you certainly have surmised, he has a wealth of experience in this area. And I don't know, how many boards again have you served on? 50? 51. So, okay. So he will speak with a lot of authority on this topic. So, with that, I will turn it over to Dick.
Well, I'm back, and according to your... And no, I'm not Gaddy Vasquez. Too bad you don't get to meet Gaddy. What a classy guy. He's I'm sure you'll see his bio and it'll say it better than me, but Gaddy was the youngest ever elected to the Board of Supervisors in Orange County. Gaddy was the U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, I think also to Brazil. I'm not sure where else you got it in front of you. You probably know better than I do. And he's just a classy guy, and he's a great Christian. A few years ago, Gaddy had a brain tumor issue and surgery, and it was critical, and they told everybody, just leave him alone. He's just barely getting into recovery. So, of course, immediately I picked up the phone and called him. And he answered, and we had a great conversation, and he assured me that it was well with his soul. And I remember 37 years ago when I had colon cancer, and I woke up out of the ether, and it was pretty scary. And it was the first words that came to my mind, that is well with my soul. And isn't it great that we as believers can say that and know it and believe it and understand it and feel it. It's just a great thing. I am not going to speak on Gaddy's topic, except when I did look at it. By the way, I was informed a few hours ago that I'm doing this, so I'm always ready. And I'd like to talk just a bit. His first topic was going to be communications. And I'm going to talk to you about what's on the back of your handout, attributes, so get it handy. But I want to talk about communication a little bit. I'm going to tell you right now, if relationships is the most important thing you're doing, communications is right alongside. It's his first cousin. Communications is critical. I mean, in anything you're doing, communications is what it's all about. When I was in the Navy, we used to have a saying, 10% of the people never get the word. 10% never heard what the order was. 10% never tried. And so you got 10% of people, 90% of people going around doing what they need to be doing, and 10% scratching their head saying, what was it that they were going to tell us or we didn't hear about? And I had a really graphic example that happened to me when I was in the Navy. They rang the general quarters alarm. If you've ever been in a military, Navy, seen a Navy movie, you've seen on the Navy movie, the bong, 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 bong. That means whatever you're doing, go to your battle station, and everything else has to be secured. Every hatch has to be locked. Everything has to be shut down. And a group of us were up playing pinochle and drinking coffee and having a hilarious time up close to the flight deck. And the general alarm went off, and we had a rock and roll music going back in those days, probably Johnny Cash or somebody, and we didn't hear it. And the next thing you know, somebody's banging the door and crashing the hatch, dogging down the hatch, and we unlocked it and somebody else locked it, and we finally stuck our heads out and said, what's going on? And they said, we're at general quarters. What are you guys doing in here playing pinochle and drinking coffee? And my general quarters station was the 7th deck down, and we were 3 decks up. And every hatch was locked in between, and I had to make my way down there. And I got to tell you, if we'd been at war, I wouldn't be here today. So, communication, I learned that day that there's nothing like communication. And no matter how hard you try, you're going to see situations where somebody isn't going to get the word. And I say communication is, first of all, critical between board member and officer. And as I mentioned before, the first thing I do when I find a new officer coming to town, I invite him to come to the house. And we continue that. We have lunch. We have lunch on a regular basis. We have coffee regularly. We talk on the phone regularly. Every time I'm driving by the office, I'll swing in and go in and just beat on his door and say, hey, how you doing? Everything okay? And maybe it is, maybe it isn't, and go on my way. But that communication is critical. And that out of that communication grows the ability to run your operation. So be sure that you establish those lines of communication and be sure you're doing them. Donor communication, staying in sync with your donors is critical. I told you the story this morning about how got the big donation in Modesto. I had a close friend who was he owned a 250 store supermarket chain. It was the biggest supermarket chain privately held in California, and he was a dear friend, very close friend, and we communicated all the time. And whenever we needed to raise money for a really big deal, we needed a key donor donation. I'm talking $500,000 or more. Go to Bob, and because of our communication, because of our relationship between the two of them, well, he never told me no. Sometimes, one time I asked him for $500,000, he gave me $250,000. Broke my heart. No, it didn't break my heart. No, nobody ever got hurt taking a $250,000 donation back to the office. But that's what it's all about. Other agencies, I mentioned this morning, getting a needs assessment so you can find out what are the overlaps, what are the gaps. You will be amazed. We sat down in Modesto one time, and we called in the agency heads for the 6 key other organizations in town. And we asked them to come for an hour or more and sit with us, with our executive committee and our key long-range planners. We asked them to sit with us, and we would just talk through. We told them to bring your program, we'll show you our program. You show me yours, we'll show you ours. And we go through and we see what's going on. You would be amazed. You'd be amazed at how much overlap there was that was unnecessary. And you'd be saddened to know how much gaps there were that weren't necessary. Nobody's filling these gaps. So that's the point of communicating with other agencies. And don't, except for the red X, excuse me for saying that, but that's what I call them. They drive me crazy. Except for, anytime there's a national disaster, the Army sends in 10 people, the Red Cross sends in 10. People from our organization go out and go to work. People from their organization go out and put red X's on all of the doors. It's crazy. And yet they get all of the publicity and all the communication. I'll tell you something else. They will tell you, because they are always featured in the national ads. They're always featured in the national publications. They will tell you that we are a priority organization. Congress has made us a priority organization in the United States. That is nonsense. There is a signed agreement between the head of the Red Cross and the head of the Salvation Army saying we are equal in responding to disasters and needs and critical issues. That issue, that was signed by whatever her name was, and Commissioner Hodder, not our Commissioner Hodder, his father, and that was signed many years ago. And somewhere in my files, I have a copy of that document that says we are equal. And if they tell you they have priority, they do not have priority. And if I had time today, I could tell you about an hour's worth of stories of frustrations we've had with the Red Cross, where they're all talk and no service, and it's very frustrating. And not enough said on that. I'm already farther out in the swamp than I wanted to be. There's various, and then there's communication of orientation. Caltha mentioned that, it was on her slide. And when you do the orientation, which is critical for the new member, the communication is really important. You need to bring that new member in and set them down. And I'll talk in a minute about how to bring in that new member. We did something in Modesto, I can't remember what we called it. We called it Board Week. And it was an e-newsletter, and we had as many emails as we could aggregate, hundreds of them, probably close to well up in the hundreds. And every Friday we sent out the e-board news to the community so they could see what we were doing in the Army. And it got pretty good. We got to where we could get color pictures, and we could have pictures of people and names and things that are going on, the things that we're doing in the community. Every Friday, without fail, we sent out that e-board newsletter to the community so they could see who we were and what we were doing. It used to be that the newspaper was important in town. How many of you read the newspaper today, besides me? That's what I thought. Okay. It used to be you needed to have either the editor or one of the public, really important people of the paper on your board. Now it's probably, I don't know. But we had that issue because we wanted that communication to go out from the newspaper. We tried to be on at least one radio station where we had a board member there because we needed to communicate with the community. And back in that day, that's how we did it. In today's world of e-commerce and everything, you're going to need to find new ways, but work on it. Come up with ideas. Come up with creative ideas. And having a weekly update on who you are and what they're doing is not all bad. Yeah, I know the delete key is on there, and a lot of people will click that delete key. That's okay. You know, if for the one that doesn't click it and read something on there, it was worth sending out. So communication, critical. In this new day and age, I'm an old guy. You know, I was born so long ago that World War II hadn't even barely started yet. But my kids call me cyber retarded, and you know, but I can still run a computer. Why are you laughing? I need to see you later. But you know, but I do my best, and I do have a computer which my daughter says is outmoded, and it burned down, and I got a new one. And she said, "Dad, why didn't you just get a tablet and a this and this and this?" And I you know, that's the way it is. But that's how we're communicating these days, and it isn't by emails anymore. It isn't by messages anymore. It's by LinkedIn. LinkedIn tried to sign me up, and as soon as I sign up with them, somebody else is going to come along. That's okay. We got to keep up with those paces, and we got to use them. That's the point I'm going to make. We got to use them. Doesn't matter what the hot item is these days. We need to be ahead of it. We need to be using it. We need a pre-board. When we're bringing people on the board, we need to communicate with them ahead of time what we expect and what we do. We won't take a board member on unless they can. We have a community meeting every few months in Modesto, and it's an awareness meeting, and we have a lunch served at the core, and we have a little video that tells what our ministry is, what our work is, and how we're operating in the community. And we invite community leaders. It's called the Leadership Day. We invite leaders from the community to come in and see who we are and what we're doing. We want them to understand it, but we also want them to know who we are, and maybe, just maybe, get the idea that maybe they'd like to come alongside of us. And you'd be surprised how many donors we've generated out of those events, and you'd be even more surprised how many board members we've generated out of those. Now, it's not easy to get on our board. To come on our board, you got to serve on a committee, or you got to serve on a community project for at least 6 months before we'll take you on our board, because we want you to be in a link and a communication flow, you to be understanding what we are and who we are and how we're doing it before we want to bring you on our board. We don't bring people cold on the board with some very, very rare exclusions for that. We try to bring people on who know us, who are engaged with us, who know our ministry and know what we're all about. And finally, in the churches, my church does a neat thing every month. Well, my church back in Modesto, my church in Phoenix does the same, but they're on different scales. My church in Modesto every Friday, the pastor sends out an update. Here's what my sermon title is going to be. Here's who's sick, needs prayer, blah, blah, blah. Here's the finance situation. And down at the bottom, it has the mission emphasis. And the Army is featured, and we are on that at least once a month. We have a prayer focus going out to the members of our church. And we also have what we call the mission moment on Sunday mornings. And our church gives different ministries in the community 5 minutes to present once a month, and the Army gets up about 2 or 3 times a year to get up and present who we are. So all this communication is critical to the community. I've just scratched the surface. I've just given you some ideas. The thing is limitless as to where it can go, and I just encourage you to get involved and to do some of these things. The sky's the limit. And if you don't do it, it isn't going to get done. It's as simple as I can say it. Okay, let's go to my self-assigned task since it got changed. Turn to the back page of your handout for me. It's called The Attributes of a Great Advisory Organization. I came up with this some years back, and I keep refining it. And it's written up in my first book in much more detail than here. But I just want to walk you through this. I use this as a tool when I'm speaking to boards. I do a lot of board mentoring. I'll travel around. If you got a board and it's in need, it either needs to be rejuvenated or it needs to be trained, and you're really going with it after 6 or 8 months. and you really need some help, give me a call, and I'll certainly help. I'll give you a resource, and I'll give you help. And if you twist my arm, and if you aren't too far away, and if I'm so inclined, I'll even drive over and do a mentoring day for you. I do that a lot, and I love to meet with boards and encourage them. And I got to tell you, I've met with a variety of boards. I've been in where we get there and there's 3 people. I've been in there when there's standing room only. I went years ago down to Merced, and there were 12 little old ladies, and I do mean right out of the picture book, 12 little old ladies and one very distinguished gentleman. And we had a break, and I said to the officer, I said, "Where did you get this?" He said, "Well, we didn't have a board, and the commissioner told us we had to have a board, but we had these little ladies that cooked every Saturday morning for the homeless, and so we asked the little ladies that were cooking if they'd be aboard, and they said sure. And so 12 of the ladies who were cooking pancakes came and started meeting with us, and we had one donor who was a very elderly man, probably my age, and he's been a huge financial donor. He really loves the Army. He knows who we're about, and he comes. He just sits silently, so we have these 12 little old ladies and our big donor, and that's our board. I mean, you name it, I've seen it, okay? So all I can say is that in my mentoring, I take this as a basic tool because it doesn't matter how big you are or how small you are. These are the essentials of what your board needs to understand. This isn't directed at you guys, but if you know it and can turn it around and pass it back, this is what your board needs to understand about who you are and who you are in the community. So let's just walk through it and I'll make a few comments. First of all, the board must clearly understand its advisory role. The board also understands the Army is first an evangelical church and then second a great social agency. The social ministry of the Army is a sole area of board focus. Except that once in a while you need to have a board Sunday. You need to have a board Sunday for your service, and you need to invite the board to come and participate. You need to let the board maybe lead the singing, maybe do some music, maybe certainly do a testimony, do the announcements, do everything, and you need to preach because your board member needs to hear your preaching, but your people in your congregation, in your core, need to see you physically as board people. So I think it's critical that you have that board Sunday and you utilize that as a part of this. Let me go back to the first sentence. The advisory board must clearly understand its advisory role. You're going to have some pretty important people. You're going to have some key people who are used to being a policy board. We talked in the first hour the difference between a policy board and an advisory board. You're going to have people come in and say, well, hey, I'm on some strong boards and I really know what's going on and I'm here to tell you how it works. That's not how it works. You are the CEO. You are in command. They are there as your advisors, with the exceptions that I laid out this morning about finance and community involvement, etc. You also need to make sure your board knows you're a church. Too many times I've had a board member, a new board member, or a new community person come up to me and said, well, you know, I really appreciate what the Army's doing here in town. We've got a homeless shelter, we got a feeding program, we got this and this and this, and whatever you guys do on Sunday mornings. Whatever you do on Sunday mornings. Whatever you do on Sunday mornings is who we are. We're a church. And you can't let the board forget that. Very important. Critical point. Number 2, the board comes alongside the local corps officer. That's you. Respecting the officer's role as CEO while strengthening the areas where the officer needs support. Now, I know a few of you are going to graduate from here and go out and know exactly how to make the budget, how to raise the funds, how to run the programs, how to implement, how to run the people, everything. Not. You're going to go out of here like, what in the world how did I end up here? And my answer to that is because the board is there to fill you in and fill in the gaps of what you don't have and what you can't do. And the more you allow that board to fill those gaps without taking command is the more successful you're going to be. And I'm going to tell you, the officers I've seen in my experience over 55 years, the officers I've seen that didn't do very well are the officers that came in with a mentality that they knew it all and they didn't need any help. We literally had a board officer tell us one time, I don't need you guys. You know what happened? Board stopped coming to meetings. And that's not what you want to happen. And I'm just admonishing you that back to the communication level, you got to keep that communication level going. You got to respect our lines of authority, but you got to look to them to fill in the gaps. Don't be ashamed to admit you don't know. Don't be ashamed to admit you don't know. The worst thing you can do is try to do something you don't know what you're doing and screw it up. And you know that. I don't have to tell you. That's just common sense. So we need to remember that the focus of this school has been spiritual. And the first day you're going to go out, you're going to discover that the focus of what you're doing is community. And that's how we've got to integrate it. And I'm not criticizing the school. It's a frustration with the focus you have, but it is what it is. And you're not getting the practical application you're going to get the first month in town. You're just going to be shaking your head, but your board is going to be there for you, I hope. And if they're not, let me know and I'll find out why. Okay, number 3. The advisory board takes the leadership and the role and the responsibility for the financial integrity at the local level. As I mentioned earlier, financial integrity is critical. If the Army has a major financial disaster in town, the newspaper, or the media or whoever, the movers and shakers, they're not going to look to you as the officer. They're going to look to Dick Hagerty. Dick Hagerty's the vision that this town has of the Salvation Army is me, because I've been doing all the city years. And if something goes wrong, who gets the phone call? And so I'm okay with that. But I just want you to understand that that's where we're there. We're there, and the community is going to look to us, right or wrong, for this financial integrity. And so we as the board have to make sure the integrity is there. And we're going to be leaning on you. If the budget isn't working, if the finance isn't working, we, the board, are going to be leaning on you hard to get these things in line, because that has to happen. And the finance committee, to me, the executive committee and the finance committee are the most important members. The finance committee, by the way, you're going to discover, you try to put a finance committee, nobody wants to be on the finance committee. Finance is boring. To me as a CPA, finance numbers are wonderful. I'm on the territorial board. I'm also advisor to the ARC board, territorial board, and I get the financials every month. I probably get them before the commissioner does. And I devour those financials. I read them line by line, and I pick up the phone and call Leroy Thiem over there and chew on him, and we talk and we go back and forth. I love those financials, but you're not going to have very many people who do love the financials. When you find that person that likes the financials, grab him and run with him, because he's going to make it really easy for you, and he's going to help you identify and know what's going on, and he's going to help you identify the weak places. He's going to help you identify the strong places. I say he. The best finance person we had in Modesto for years was a woman. She was the controller for a company that I was involved with, and she was powerful. She totally understood the financials, and we had 3 CPAs on the board, and this woman, who was not a CPA, was the one that understood the financials. Go figure. Army financials aren't the easiest thing in the world to understand. I'm going to tell you that right now. If you're reading in our books, Commissioner Nolan will make a whole chapter about how I got an A in management at the school, and when I got out in the field, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. He said, so I had to call a friend, another officer, in to explain, and that's what you need to do. You're going to have to rely on somebody, typically a board member who's been around and understands it. So just make sure. The board has to approve the budget before it goes to division. Board has to approve the budget. Now, we talk about us not being a policy board. I'd say in that area, we're a policy board. We are integrally involved in the budget. If the budget doesn't get approved by the board, the divisional commander is supposed to send it back and say, where's the board approval? I've seen that fudged a few times, but we won't belabor that. I'm sure none of you would ever do that. So we'll move right along from that. Number 4, the board needs to elect the chair and board officers willing and able to manage the board, maintain integrity of the Army and the community. We're back to that word again. Closely monitor and review finance programs, but leave the management expressly in the hands of the local officer in charge. You should have an executive committee. Executive committee is critical. Calvin put the slide up a bit ago, and it showed board chair, vice chair, secretary, treasurer, immediate past board chairman, and possibly one or two other key people. That's the executive committee. They need to meet before the regular board meeting, at least a week, maybe 2 weeks ahead. And the I like to say the executive committee does the heavy lifting for the board. An executive committee comes together, obviously with you, the officer. You must be at every committee meeting. That's in the Army handbook. The Army must be represented at committees. The executive committee receives reports and recommendations from other committees. They monitor the finances, and they make the recommendations into the full board. If it hasn't gone through exec, it should not be coming to full board. Exec needs to be the filtering agency, if you will, the place where these things get worked on, and the hard work, the heavy lifting, the managing, and the winnowing out happens at executive committee level. That's critical. Number 5, clearly define the role of new members, including recruiting, orientation, committee assignments, making the member. This is the board. The board is responsible for building the board. The board needs to hold clear expectations of each member to give financial support and other input as needed. That's an important thing. I said the board needs to build itself. That's not really true. You as the officer will encounter people in community, especially if you're in a service club, if you're involved in some other things. And you'll meet somebody that will bond to you rather than to some other board member. And if you see somebody like that, you need to immediately bring them to the attention of the nominating committee. My rule of thumb says that the board, the chair, the officer, that's you, the officer should never put more than 1/3 of the new members in. The board needs to build itself. That's my rule. That's not a hard and fast. There are no rules on that. But I think you'll build a better board if you rely on your board to do it rather than yourself. I'll give you a couple of examples why. We had a situation in Modesto where the officer came and said, I want to put so-and-so on the board, quote unquote. I want to put this guy on the board. He was an attorney. And I said, well, that's all well and good, but just before you came, he sued us. And he sued us very aggressively in local superior court, and we had a tough time defending some of the things he was representing, the minority communities, the Hispanics and the down and outs, and we had a very expensive encounter with him, and I think he still got it in for us. You really want to put him on the board? Silence. Okay, bring the names to us. That's great, but don't sign somebody up if we don't know about it. I'll give you another case example. We had a guy who had been on our board, and he went off to prison for a year. He seemed like he was a big executive in town with a marketing company, and he'd neglected to put a $500,000 bonus into his income tax, and the IRS found it, and he went to federal court and spent a year at Lompoc and the federal prison. And he got out, and he's back in the community. And part of the thing, we had a big fundraiser, and he made a $250,000 commitment to the fundraiser, which we had to pay. So the next thing we know, the officer is coming around. He said, I want to put this guy on the board. I've already talked to him, and he's ready to go on the board. And we said, well, he's made a commitment, but we're a little questionable, and he's just been in prison. Bottom line is, we did put him on the board, and he never made the $250,000 payment. And he's still walking around town as a convicted felon, but his name is on our roster. What's wrong with this picture? No answer. Okay. So please come to the board and talk to us before you make appointments and announcements with people you really don't know the background. We are the board. We know the community. If you believe in this person for good reasons, we're not going to turn them down. But we're certainly not going to approve them if they've got baggage that you don't know about. So that's about as simply as I can say it. Number 6, work as, I didn't finish. The second sentence in number 5. Board members are expected to give financial support. Now, to each according to his ability. What's the verse? You probably know it better than I do. We all give according to our ability. We had a black pastor in a very small minority community who was a member of our board. I happened to be a member of his church. I was the only white man in the church for 7 years. That was an adventure. And I recruited him to the board, and it was a wonderful experience. And he and I just had a great relationship, went off on a mission trip to Haiti and some other stuff. But when it came time to give, this poor guy didn't have any funds at all. And I just came to him and I said, Charlie, I said, you got to give. To each of his ability. You know, we got a board member that's committed $100,000. We got others that are giving $5,000, $10,000. I don't care if you give $25, but you got to give something, because we got to be able to say to the community, every member of our board is on board financially. And if we can't say that, we got a problem. And he did. I think he gave us $50, and it was all well and good. I said, you know, it's so serious that if you can't afford it, I'll give you the money and you write the check. But you've got to have skin in our game. Number 6, we work as a team with the officer and staff to fully accomplish the social ministries of the community. We develop written policy and strategy for the board to follow and maintain. It's critical we have a program committee. It's critical you have a long-range plan. I will guarantee you, when you go to your first assignment and you ask them if you can see the long-range plan, I'll guarantee you they can't find it. In fact, I'll tell you what, if you go there and you find it, you take a picture of it and you send it to me, because I would like to be told that I'm wrong. Every corps is supposed to have a long-range plan. Every corps is supposed to have a long-range plan that they update on a periodic basis. Building that long-range plan allows you to understand what the whole community is doing. Again, where the overlaps and the gaps appear and disappear. And without that long-range plan, I don't know. And here's the beauty of a long-range plan. You're not going to rely on it to follow it, but you're sure going to open your eyes when you create it to what needs to be done. Are you with me? The process of creating a long-range plan is much more important than having that thing on the shelf like an encyclopedia that nobody ever looks at. You may not look at it, but if you've created it, you're really going to understand it. Believe that. And so I'm just telling you, I'm making you my guarantee. You ask where that long-range plan is, they ain't going to be able to find it. I hate to say that, it's probably true. And if it's not true, you let me know. Number 7. We organize the board into effective working committees which meet regularly and report directly to the board for full action. Caltha put some sample committees up there. You can go any number. I think I've told you at the first hour that in Modesto at one time we had 25 working committees. You need basically about 5. You need an exec. You need a finance committee. If you can't get the finance committee to operate very functionally, you can combine those two. This is all spelled out in my book, by the way. Finance, exec, you need a program committee, you need a fundraising committee, you need a property committee. Property committee is critical. You need to find a contractor or somebody who understands properties that can, when the toilet overflows, who do you call? You call the plumber? No, you call the property guy. And he gets a hold of who he knows will do it. Probably he's got a list of people that for just the right things will do everything on the snap of a finger, probably at no charge. If you've got a good property committee, you've got a lot of problems solved. Trust me, I speak from experience. We got a guy in Modesto, Bob, and he loves property. And I'm telling you what, he's retired now, he lives at the core. And he's in there fixing stuff and filling dispensers and adding and this and this and this. He's grumpy. He's all the time grumpy. He's all the time complaining about how this is messed up and somebody poked a hole in the wall over here. After he gets done complaining about the hole in the wall, he goes and fixes it. And that's the kind of guy you need. Go find yourself a Bob that'll fix this stuff up so you don't have to. Okay? Number 8. This is important. They're all important, but I love this one. Great boards have great meetings. Meetings must start and end on time. I need to say that again. Meetings must start and end on time. I'll be back to that in a second. Let me finish. Reporting should be brief. Input and dialogue for all the members must be encouraged. You need a meeting where everybody feels like they participated. If only one person does the speaking, if only one person is involved, that's not good. The chairman and the board, the chairman and the officer, that's you, cannot dominate the meeting. If you go in and run the whole meeting, you and your board chairman, you're going to see holes in the chairs where people aren't coming because they just don't want to go in and listen to a report. They want to go in and be involved. That's why they're on your board. They want to be involved. So make that meeting punctual and make that meeting meaningful and make people feel like they've participated. I was asked to go down and speak at an annual dinner one time at the college in Cal Poly. And I drove down early that day, and the meeting was to start at 6. Dinner was to be started at 6:30. Meeting was started at 7:15. We were supposed to be over by 8:30. They didn't serve dinner until 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock. And I'm like, looking at my watch and looking around, and we're past the time to go home, and they finally put me on, and I got up and I said, you know, I didn't say I've driven all the way. I just got up and said, the hour is late, and I'm sorry we've kept you. I'm sorry. A lot of people already left, obviously. I said, the hour is late. I'm not going to offend you by keeping you here. I just want to tell you this is a great organization. The people here are committed to this community. We're doing our best, and everything. Thank you for coming. Thank you for supporting the Army. Drive safely, and sat down. And I got a big round of applause. I think they appreciated that speech. But the point was, busy people have a busy schedule. You tell people at your board meeting you're going to have them on the street at 12:30, at 1:30. Meeting starts at noon. You'll have you on at 1:30, and you're going on till 1:40 or 1:45. You know the worst part? You probably put the most important information and the most important business at the end of the agenda. And at 1:30, 1:35, people start getting up and going back to work. You got executives. You got people that have to be back to work who were promised to be on the street at 1:30, and at 10 till 2, you're finally getting around to taking a vote on a critical issue, and you only got a half a house full of people. What's wrong with this picture? That's between you and the board chairman. But I'm aiming this more at the board chairman than you. But I want you to take this with you and hold to it. Start on time, end on time. And when you have a meal as a part of your event, whether it's a noon meeting or an evening meeting or an annual meeting or whatever, make sure it gets served the moment you said it would serve. I have heard so many excuses from so many caterers. Well, we're just not quite ready yet. We're just not quite. Time out. A month ago, when we arranged this, we should have made it very clear what time the plates go down, what time the covers come off, what time the feeding is done. If you don't do that, you're going to get a reputation around town. People aren't going to come the next time. That's how you're going to pay the price. People aren't going to hear the important stuff. People aren't going to want to come back because you're the guys that run over all afternoon, and they don't have time for that. So, number 9, be accountable for legal, financial, and program efficiencies. We need to be right alongside the officer, making sure that the programs are efficient and they're financially stable and they're working. And I'm looking at my watch saying, I got to be on time here, guys. I see Calvin come back. 2 more minutes, girl, then you come down. So we need to evaluate for effectiveness. We need to make sure that inactive members become active. We need to be calling members ahead of a meeting, especially if they aren't very good at making meetings. We need to offer to give them a ride if they need. We need to make sure that people are coming. I also like with a brand new member, anytime a brand new member comes on board, I sit beside them. I sit beside them with my good ear on going to them. I sit beside them so that they'll understand what's going on. I can whisper to them what emotion is about. I can whisper to them what the process is that's going on so that they'll know and they'll feel involved. And finally, pursue excellence by keeping board members forward-looking, focused on outcome and results. The board must discipline itself as to attendance, participation, activity, demand that board members fully utilize their community relationships. Hey, that's why they're there. They've got to use your community relationships to further the image and promote the work of the Army. And my famous saying at the end, and believe it or not, whenever we get a new officer in Modesto, the board asks me to get up at the first meeting and say this, and I quote it I'll read it to you, but I quote it. I say, remember, the board represents the continuing face of the Salvation Army to the community. Officers will come and officers will go, but the advisory board remains the constant within the community. While you're here, you're in charge. But what you do while you're here, we will live with after you're gone, because we are the Salvation Army in this community. It's as plainly as I can say it. We love you. We want you to come. We want you to lead us. We want you to be the boss. We want you to be in charge. But we want you to leave a better place than what you found. And we want to do it together, where you can't see one side, where one starts and the other leaves off. Come on down, girl.
Ooh, leading with excellence, right? Great reminder. I forgot I'm supposed to use this microphone. Leading with excellence. What a great reminder. So we wanted to just take the opportunity to just kind of have open forum where you guys can just ask some questions, right? You got 2 sessions from Mr. Dick today, and of course 1 from myself. And actually we tag team and presented together 2 years ago when we first did that. Lots of fun. So, but it's, you know, it's a lot of information, right, when we take this in. And so we want you to just, anything that you're thinking about, any questions, anything that we mentioned that you maybe want some further explanation, dialogue, and then this is just a great opportunity for you guys to ask questions as well. So I will open up the floor and come around with the microphone. So lunch is 11:45 just because we moved the agenda again. But if you do need, it sounds like you guys might have to pick up kids. So if you do need to exit, you can. Yes, no worries, no worries. Yeah, so any questions? Any questions, thoughts, concerns, just anything that's swirling as you think about eventually, you know, making these moves. And Robert already sent me a invite on LinkedIn, so he's one ahead of all you guys, FYI.
So say I get to a new appointment and they do not have an advisory board, and I'm going to recruit, but I'm also not from that community. I don't know anyone there. What's a way for me to find like key members if I don't have any connections in that area as I arrive?
Excellent question. Here we go, Mr. Dick.
Somebody, when they were asked that question, said, just find a Dick Hagerty. But that's not the answer. You need to find a key person who believes in you. First thing I would do, if you don't have any board in your community, is I'd go back to history and see if there was a board. Probably, very likely there was, and for whatever reason, bad communication with the officer, bad situation, bad communication on the board, something happened, you don't have that anymore. Find out if there was, and if there was, go to those people that are listed and say, hey, there's a new sheriff in town, and we'd like to take a cut at this. Would you be interested in helping us? I'm not asking you to come back on the board. Would you be interested in helping us piece something together? And probably at least 1 or 2 of those would be willing to come on the board. And then it really only takes 1 or 2 to get it started. 1 or 2 key people. I like to say in the book that I worked at Kaiser Industries when I was first out of school and young CPA, and we had I worked for Kaiser Engineers, and we had a dam we built in the Guri River in Venezuela, and it was a mile down in the chasm. It's going to be an earth-filled dam. And how did we build that dam? How do you build a dam that's a mile down? They went out and got the biggest rocks they could find, brought them up, backed them up to the edge of the canyon, and started dumping the rocks down. And the rocks tumbled down into the Guri River, and most of them were swept away. But then one stuck, and then some more, and then some more stuck, and then some more stuck. And pretty soon, you get one to stick. Then you get other rocks that stick to it. I don't know how to say it better. And you get somebody that can stick, and then it just goes from there. So you got to find that key person or people that are willing to help build you and build around, and then they go out to their contacts and their relationships. Excellent.
I'm going to come to you just really quick as this came to me. So of course we talked about the LinkedIn, right? And you'll do some things, but also too, I think it's really important to connect with the territorial, the territories, like all the territories now. Like I know there's one in Denver. Like I visited the DHQ. I've been to a fundraising event in Napa and San Francisco, and I've been to the San Francisco office. So I think that will at least start, because once you, again, build the start, if you think about now for 6 months to the next year and 6 months, you're building all these relationships, somebody will know somebody for you. So that was a really, really great question. Thanks for asking.
Yes. Is it typical for like mayors or other government officials to be on advisory boards, or is that some kind of conflict of interest? Is that something that we do?
Shoot for the best.
Yes.
Shoot for the best. I always say, try to get the mayor. If the mayor won't come, then get a city council person. City council person won't come, get a planning commissioner. But keep working on it. In Modesto, I would say in the last 20 years, we had every mayor but one. We had one mayor that had his Bible on his desk, and he had his Salvation Army thing on his wall, and it was just a great testimony. People go in his office, and there it is. And so, as far as shoot for the best, I say go to the leading company in town and try to sign up the CEO. If he won't do it, ask him who. We went to the county, and we asked the county social services director, what's more important to us than social services? We asked her to join our board, and she said, no, but I'll let my number one aide come on the board. 9 months later, she came on because she got so intrigued by what was going on. We asked the school superintendent to come on the board, and he not only came on his county board, he not only came on the board, but when he couldn't come to a meeting, he would send his chief assistant, shoot for the best, and then take whatever you can get that'll be almost as good. But always shoot for the best.
Excellent.
I got a question. So first a comment. Of course, I make being a good community partner in the community is just like heaven, right? It's not always what you know, but it's who you know. And so, just a little comment there. I think on that and the whole that whole relationship marketing, the whole relationship networking. What I'm interested to know is what are the initial first steps in going about and doing a local needs assessment in the area.
I think the first issue is real easy. Real easy. You identify the top providers in town, whether it's the homeless shelter, the Red Cross, whoever. You'll find the agencies in town, and ask their CEO, schedule them to come in. The rescue mission. Trying to think who else, and ask them, schedule one a month and have them come in just for a round table for an hour or two. You tell us yours, we'll tell you ours. We'll dialogue. There's no agenda, no formality. We'll just sit around the table and talk about what we do and what you do, and we'll try to identify the gaps and the overlaps. And that's how you start, and that's how you start a needs assessment, is how you start a long-range plan.
That's an excellent question, because the needs assessment, right? You guys are all going to be in different locations. It's going to be really different. But there's two things, because I put myself in your shoes. I always say if God didn't call me to the marketplace to be love and light in business, I'd be where you guys are, because I just value what you guys do. It's amazing. I would do two things. So I live 5 blocks south of the Capitol, and I've never been involved with like American politics or anything. And the amount of people that I have now had to get a chance to network with, and they have so much influence. So for example, Los Alamitos, you guys know where Los Alamitos is? I have a friend who actually we serve on. So Influence Women is a board that I serve on that serves Christian women in Hollywood. And how I met Emily is that she serves on that board. Her and I are actually really good friends now. I actually had dinner with her last night. She's on council for Los Alamitos. So I can tell you right now, if any of you guys end up in that region, Emily would be an excellent person to bring on your board. She's super connected all through Hollywood. She has her own studio. She has, she's outstanding. So so keep that in mind. And she's a great person to connect on LinkedIn. I'll connect you with her on LinkedIn. And so, but those I had I didn't really know what the councilmen, what they did. And it's everything for that city and that surrounding area, and they make decisions. So when you come into a new area, that should be your number one priority. Let me go and meet with the local leaders, right? Mayors, governors. You guys have the uniform. You can get the meeting, right? So walk with authority, get those meetings. But then businesses, see who's in your area. So when I moved to Ohio and I got relocated to the corporate headquarters, I didn't know, but I had Progressive Insurance at the time. Progressive Insurance was headquartered there. Had no idea. So there's always small businesses and large businesses in your region. They're always wanting to be involved in the community and give back. So that's an excellent place. And between the local representatives and business owners, and even small business owners and women-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses and veteran-owned businesses, they love to give back. So those should be, I know for me, if I was doing this right now, those are the two areas that I would target to kind of start that networking. Any other questions?
A judge is wonderful to have on there. There's always some issues that, especially in our ARC, having a judge on your board is fabulous. A pastor, just one pastor. You get two, they'll argue with each other theology. One pastor is essential. He becomes your pastor, you become his pastor. You guys need a pastor other than besides your DC and somebody local. Get him on your board and communicate with him and integrate alongside of him. An attorney, you need a good attorney because you got a lot of estate work, a lot of things like that. So get an attorney, a CPA, at least one. We had 3 on our board. None of us practiced accounting, but we could read the financials. Those are just some ideas. And I think in my book there's a list of suggested categories. And when we had 40 board members, we probably had 30 categories that were filled. But you also need a housework. You need a community person. You need people that aren't rich and famous. You need the common denominator because you got to have other voices heard.
Yeah. No, that's excellent. All right, we have time for one more because lunch is about to start. So, do we have any last questions to wrap this up for the morning session? Poof! Mic drop. Mic drop. All right, you guys. Well, this was an outstanding morning session. I hope you really got a lot out of it. We really enjoyed being with you. So we're going to go for lunch for an hour, and then we'll be back for the afternoon session, and we'll kick it off with Katie and marketing. All right. Thanks, everybody.